Good morning or good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you all for joining us today for the Video Versatility webinar with Greg Advertising. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar will be recorded today, so we'll be sending out an email to all attendees so you can have that for your reference. You can also go to gregadv.com/webinars to view more resources. And if you need a certification for today, go ahead and send an email to Kat Vaughn at gregadv.com, and also be sure to follow us on Twitter. Our hashtag is GregChat today, and tag us at GoWithGreg. So today's presenters, we have Rick Anderson, Creative Director here at Greg Advertising, and Kat Vaughn, Digital Media Group Director. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kat.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. And I wanted to say before we get started, a big thank you to Tiffany. She is our mediator. She is the one that actually was just speaking and is the one who went ahead and sent everything up for today. So we're thrilled to be able to have her assistance. And for those of you who are listening, I am Kat Vaughn. I am the director of the Digital Media Group here at Greg Advertising.
And I'm Rick Anderson, the Creative Director at Greg Advertising.
And Rick and I are both excited to be here speaking to you all today about video marketing. We both have been very fortunate over the past couple of years to be able to enhance our video capabilities and to really see the impact of video come to fruition within the marketing strategies that we've been employing for our clients. In fact, the outline for this webinar today actually came from an article that we had written here in-house about the importance of video marketing, and we actually went ahead and had posted that on our Greg blog back at the beginning of 2015. We also had Rick take this one step further because he's an overachiever, and he actually was published in an article in Feedfront magazine here just recently in August 2015 about video versatility. So really, without further ado, I'm going to let Rick go ahead and get us started and jump into talking about video versatility.
Thanks, Kat. I appreciate it. I think with all of the efforts that our DMZ group has done in the last 4 years, I think the exciting part from the creative perspective is the fact that we've seen not only the potential, but a lot of the opportunities that have come from seeing video online and how it really can enhance as well as expand the brand awareness of your particular company or your particular entity. One thing I think is interesting, we put video matters to every marketing strategy, and I really want to emphasize this because at one time, you probably heard that the speculation that video is going away. Well, obviously it's not going to happen. First and foremost, we're visual animals. We experience through 5 senses, and of those, sight and sound have become one of the most powerful combinations for experiencing or immersing ourselves into a story or into a happening. And when it comes to the hierarchy of brand awareness, video remains the muscle medium. And I want to really emphasize that because it's becoming the driving force of any of the marketing strategies that we develop here, and what's nice, it just keeps evolving. And here to talk about how we can use video strategically and reach your target audience and expand it, I'd like to bring Kat into this for a second.
Sure. So we have up here on the slide that video, when it comes to your marketing strategy, can be effective across many different avenues and many different industries. And that is so true. Video isn't something that is exclusively successful for B2B marketing or B2C marketing or for nonprofits or for EDU. We do see that it really spans across every industry. And a large part of that has to do with what your overall marketing strategy is when it comes to utilizing video and what your end goal objective is that you're driving towards. So, and a part of that also plays into it is going to be the quality of your messaging and of the video content that you are putting together and really showcasing through your implementation.
At this point, creative quality video content isn't rocket science. It isn't difficult for anyone at this point to put it to good use. And if you're not including video in your digital marketing strategy, we want to emphasize you're missing an opportunity, but you're also missing opportunities as well.
So what we'd like to do now is we'd like to ask all of you who are listening to engage in a poll that we have regarding what your video advertising is right now and if you're currently utilizing it. So we'll go ahead and, there you go. So it looks like right now as the responses are coming in that we do see that over 70% of those of you that are listening are actively utilizing digital video, which is great. But for the 20 to 30% of you who don't, as Rick mentioned, there is opportunity for you to go ahead and to actually utilize that. So when we're taking a look at your overall marketing strategy, what we want to do when it comes to video is look and say, what are you doing when it comes to your top of the funnel offers that you have? And video is a great way to go ahead and to actually have offers there that are going to be at that top of the funnel aspect. And when I'm referencing that top of the funnel buzzword, I'm talking about those channels that you're utilizing that really engage and target your consumers through creating awareness of whatever product and service it is that you're offering and looking to really drive them down the funnel on their pathway to purchase. Now, with video advertising, you do have the ability to focus on targeting your audiences through a wide variety of options, such as demographics, age, and even location targeting. And so since you have that level of targeting with video, that does take it one step further than you've had capabilities with, for instance, with traditional television, and you've actually been able to focus more on your target audience. Now, I mentioned traditional television, and that's because broadcast television has typically been a primary top of the funnel offer, but YouTube really changed the game when they were founded at the beginning, early 2000s. And now what we're seeing is that video actually reaches more 18 to 34-year-olds, which for many of you listening, that's going to be the target audience that you're striving to market to. We found that they actually, YouTube actually reaches more of those than any cable network. And that number is increasing every single day.
So understanding this potential, what better way to engage users than through video advertising? The thing to appreciate here is that video will continue to impact all channels, even as ever-changing technology influences the way it's delivered.
So with video, we do find that nothing is as versatile as video when it comes to really creating that awareness. And as Rick had mentioned at the very beginning of this webinar, human beings are highly visual beings, and we've always been that way. But as our world around us continues to evolve, we have to change how we're engaging with our surroundings. And especially as marketers, we have to really embrace that change when it comes to how we're going to be interacting with those consumers. Because even if we're not necessarily our target audience, we are changing in the way that we're interacting. And so we need to make sure that we're adjusting to how our target audience is choosing to engage with our brand. Now, with the advancements in technology, our world is consistently demanding information in light speed. And so as marketers, we're going to have to do something to not only be able to reach our audience, but to make sure that we can cut through that clutter and the chaos. Especially, with directing our digital media group that we have here, there is a ton of new initiatives rolling out on a daily basis when it comes to digital marketing. And so as new technologies are rolling out, as new channels become available for advertisers to engage in, we're increasing the amount of clutter that we're actually putting out there for our audience to see and to engage with. Now, with video, we have that ability to tap into the most basic elements of what our consumers are actually looking for and really grab them by engaging more of their senses. So you may not have ever thought about it, but with video, we have motion, we have sight, we have sound, and all three of those are present and are stimulating to our audience versus other channels like print advertisement, like paid search, that don't have that power to be able to hit consumers on all three levels. So we can meet our consumers' need of wanting information quickly, wanting information now, being displeased when you're not able to get things immediately, and we can make sure that the information we have is compelling, all while reaching out and resonating with the audience that we want to speak to.
And I like Leave It to Beaver and the Honeymooners. So it just continues to get better. And as we see from generation to generation, we've seen the exponential growth in consumer consumption. The entry barriers are low, and video is not as expensive as you think.
But video also has the power to be so much more than that. And one of the reasons that I love being able to do this webinar with Rick is because it actually can talk about how video lets you tell your brand story effectively. And Rick here at GRAG, for those of you who may not have ever had the pleasure of speaking with him, that is his job. He goes out and he is a steward of all of our clients' brands. And so with video, we're able to take that one step further. We're able to engage in different avenues to be able to go ahead and make sure that we can convey the power of your brand effectively.
The thing that any smart marketer is going to do is build their brand through effective storytelling. And that lets you tell a better story with your video. That's what we do. We look at, when we build a brand, we look at the humanity of what we're trying to voice. We create the idea of the story and try to remember the big idea in the whole scheme of the strategy itself. So you can use video to educate, to inform, to entertain your audience. But connecting your brand with the audience and adding value to the relationship is the primary goal. Building the brand relationship, and with a video, you have a better understanding and potential of communicating to your audience. And remember that the video is the great communicator. It's persuasive and it influences buying decisions. Bottom line, video levels the playing field. Creating a video used to take months and could cost thousands of dollars just to create, let alone promote it. And you don't need a lot of money now to create and promote your video. A great idea can be developed with a smartphone and with an end goal objective. Video is no longer a privilege only accessible to big brands and big budgets. But viral and its disruptive nature isn't our objective. We must remember that. Humanizing your brand video fosters trust. Video has the ability to break down boundaries by making communication more personal and human.
And I wanted to jump in here for just a second, because when Rick and I were talking about, having the ability to put together this webinar, we definitely come at it from two different sides. And Rick is very much on the ideology side of video content, on focusing on the brand, focusing on the message, focus on the actual content that people are going to be able to see. Whereas from the digital marketing aspect side of things, I come at it from the implementation standpoint. How are we, within the budget that we're going to be working within and within the end goal objectives that our clients come to us with, how are we going to be able to really mesh those two together to make sure that it's going to be impactful, and that at the end of the day, it's going to get your message across and it's going to get you the results that you want. And Rick is so right that video really does level the playing field. Before, we were able to see that really, if you wanted to be able to engage in online video, or if you wanted to be able to have huge reach and high engagement, you needed to be a large brand. You needed to be Coca-Cola. And that simply isn't the case anymore. So I wanted to go ahead and take a second and allow those of you to go ahead and to actually participate in our poll, talking about, for those of you that use video, what your end goal objective is. I think that it's very important for us to really understand what the end goal is when it comes to video, because in order to be able to successfully achieve your end goal, we need to know what that is. And with video, there's going to be so many different options that really cater to whatever that goal is going to be. So let's take a second. All right, so it looks as the responses are coming in that it says 9% of you, or sorry, 0% of you are looking to actually gain an X amount of views, whereas 12% are looking to increase overall brand awareness, perhaps promote a new product or a new service launch, and then 7% are actually looking to increase the audience reach, and then 80% say at some point all of the above have been your end goal objectives.
I think the interesting part about this is when you say all of the above and you start addressing brand awareness as well as your audience reach. The most important thing to remember here is understand your brand, and I mean that from the essence, understanding that from your value proposition and how you are going to present your messaging consistently across all channels. So you're going to be addressing your message platform. And once you develop a sound message platform from your brand, you can at least present a consistency. The rest is up to the effectiveness of the story or the big idea. And that's something that should be an important part of not only considering the messaging, but do remember your brand awareness has a real mechanical connection. And that's how that brand awareness is reflected in your value proposition and how that translates into your message platform.
So Rick, with your brand essence and with the brand platform, is that something that even if you're not a large brand, as long as you have an understanding and you have an idea, that you can actually put to fruition through video advertising?
Yeah, I think the important part of this is you do want to do something very basic, and that is just keep focused on telling a story. Because if you can keep the story engaging, you will keep an attention to the video as well as the possibility of persuasion and ultimately response.
Great. So now that we have a read on what everyone's end goal objective is, I wanted to talk a little bit about the implementation aspect. So what are going to be some opportunities that exist out there when it comes to video platforms and the different kinds of advertising options that are available to marketers? So there's a wide variety of different video platforms that as an advertiser you can certainly utilize. For today, we're going to be focusing just on YouTube and specifically what those options would be there. So for those marketers, so for those of you who said that you do have specific CPA goals that you're driving towards, and for those of you who are looking not just only to increase your reach, but also your engagement for your brand, through YouTube, we do find that TrueView video ads are typically going to be that best route for you to go. Now, as I'm walking through and talking about these different implementation options, I won't get into too much of the nitty-gritty of it since this isn't a tutorial, and I'm guessing the majority of those of you who are listening probably aren't actually the ones that do the implementation. But one of the benefits when it does come to TrueView video ads is going to be that you have the ability to actually run your video campaigns on a cost per view basis. So we've been talking throughout this entire webinar on determining who your target audience is going to be. And if you're working with a bootstrap budget or if you're specifically driving towards certain goals, then the TrueView video ads are going to really be the best way for you to do and engage in advertising because you're going to be able to focus on a cost per view basis. And what that means is that you're only going to be focusing on those viewers who are actually watching your video and engaging with it. So one of the other benefits to utilizing that is this also is a good option for those of you who perhaps need to have a longer format when it comes to how you're conveying your message and what you're actually detailing out. Because with TrueView video ads, they don't have a maximum length to them. Now, for those of you who are wanting to increase brand awareness, but also have control over where your video is, we tend to find here that using reserved video ads are going to be a good fit for you. Now, here at Grag Advertising, our focus is typically on direct response and on wanting to drive either immediate inquiries, immediate prospects, immediate sales. And so we tend to not necessarily engage on a frequent basis in running impression-based advertisement, which is going to be what reserved video ads are actually run off of. But we do find that those are going to really fulfill that need for increasing brand awareness while still allowing for you to be able to control the target audience that's viewing your message. So if you're having a little bit more leeway with your budget, if you definitely have a little bit more room to play around and you're wanting to focus on that impression base, then reserved video ads are going to be the way for you to go. One of the cool things about video ads specifically with reserve is going to be that these are the formats that have both the skippable or non-skippable formats. And I know that I've definitely been on YouTube before and have been watching a video and I'm always wanting it to be a skippable ad so I can just move on. Well, that's going to be that reserved video ad. So obviously I'm not going to be that target audience. That advertiser isn't going to want to have to pay for me to watch that ad. Now, lastly, for marketers that are wanting to go for huge reach and engagement, and often for typically those brands that have a new product offering or a new service offering, and typically if budget is not necessarily a restriction, then there is homepage advertisement actually on YouTube. That is the way to go. Now, since as I mentioned, at Greg Advertising, we are mostly direct response focused. We tend to not do as many ads that are going to be on the homepage of YouTube, but depending, once again, what your angle objective is, this can be a great way to have your video shown for an entire day to everyone that's going to be hitting the YouTube homepage. And really what that does is it gives you as much reach and as much engagement to those users who are actually going to be hitting YouTube. Now, the one downfall with this is that unfortunately there is no targeting capability with it. So those are going to be those three different options, as I mentioned, specifically just on YouTube, which is the video platform that we're going to be specifically talking about today. Those are going to be those different options that we have there. Now, I know most of you, 80% of you, had said that at some point, all three of those angle objectives, focusing on a particular CPA, increasing brand awareness, and then also wanting to go for huge reach and engagement is going to be the focus that you have. And one of the nice things, especially with working from the digital side of things, as well as working specifically with video advertising, is going to be that we have the ability to change. We have the ability to be nimble. We can move quickly and we can implement multiple strategies as your overall marketing strategy may change.
Wow, that's a lot, Kat. Good job. Using video effectively on social media then really expands your reach, and we can't emphasize that enough. People who use your website are far more likely to share video content than text content. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google have all embraced video. Produce quality video content that people share, and you'll expand your reach.
So when it comes to social media, I did talk specifically about YouTube and about YouTube specifically from the ad platform. But when it comes to the actual native ability of using video on social media, Facebook and Instagram are huge. In fact, today, I was very surprised to see when I opened up my email this morning, an article from eMarketer that actually was released today, and it was called Native Mobile Video Lifts Upper and Lower Funnel Metrics. In-feed mobile video ads actually lift recall and increase purchase intent. And so I found that so timely, obviously, since I was giving a webinar today on native video. But when it comes to utilizing Facebook, native video is the way to go. And when I'm referencing native video, I'm talking about a video that's posted specifically on Facebook and not a video that actually links to another platform. And one of the benefits of utilizing native video is that native videos show up within your users' news feeds. And they appear as shared content and not necessarily as an advertisement, which can lead to overall increased engagement. Now, we've talked about how the target audience for the majority of those of you who are probably listening is 18 to 34. So it's going to be that millennial generation. And millennials are really going to be those digital natives. And social media is a huge way for them to engage and to also make decisions, especially decisions that may be very costly, such as going back to school, such as purchasing a car, such as looking to buy a home. And they tend to put more weight on actually what their friends or on what actual users of a product or service of a brand say versus what the actual brand says. Now, that doesn't mean that brands and companies can't actually use native video. You can. You just have to make sure that the way in which you are putting forth that information is going to be in an appropriate way. So I mentioned that native video in itself actually shows up within the newsfeed and does not appear to be an advertisement. And so from a brand or company standpoint, if you want to engage in utilizing video marketing when it comes to Facebook, when it comes to Instagram, there's 3 very basic components that you need to follow. And the first one is going to be interesting with or without sound. And that's because depending on what platform you're on, you may not be able to have sound enabled on the onset. So you want to make sure that the video content that you're putting forth is going to be engaging and is going to be interesting. You also want to make sure that it's going to be genuine, because this millennial population, just like anyone in general, tends to see the value in genuine information as opposed to staged information. So if it comes across as an advertisement, the less likely you're going to be able to see a high level of engagement actually come off of it. And typically what you're going to want is you're going to want your users to be able to engage in what you're putting forth. Now, secondly, make your video engaging early on. I mentioned that it needs to be interesting with or without sound, but you also have to make sure that the information you're putting forth grabs your users and grabs your viewers' attention, because they likely aren't going to watch it longer than a few seconds. It's similar to broadcast television, and when you're going to be putting forth information in any commercial, you want to make sure that you give them just enough leeway to get interested and then put forth the information you want them to actually understand and to have as a takeaway. Well, video, even through the digital format, is no different, especially from the native side. And then the third one is, don't forget that the copy that you post with your video, especially on the Facebook platform where you can go ahead and actually post a caption with it, is going to be equally as important as the video content that you actually put forth. A lot of times we'll tend to put more emphasis on the video because the video is going to be what's new, what's shiny. It's got the sound, it's got the motion, and it's got the site capability in there. But you also want to make sure that you're not doing a disservice to your video by not putting forth strong copy with it. So you want to make sure that even in the copy you're posting, that it's going to be compelling, it's going to be intriguing, and it's going to be complementary to your video content.
Yes, Kat, I think the thing to remember here is that whenever you put your messaging forward, sometimes you're going to have their complete attention. Other times you may not. And so you want to make sure that your messaging is concise, that you have wordsmithed it down to the efficiencies that will obviously give the total idea and messaging in a definitive amount of time. But you also want to understand that you have a visual, and sometimes the visual may be the typography that supports the messaging. So make sure what you say and what you present in the messaging can be done from not only voice, but also can be done when you actually are watching the video. So a lot of this can be lasting and can be more persuasive when you really have the support of what we would call super, as well as the messaging itself. Long and short, video commands stronger consumer attention. And by utilizing video, we're able to drive and capture attention. The thing that is important, videos have been proven to demand more consumer attention than any other medium. And that's why we talk about this as the medium muscle. This is the visceral side. If there is any actual strength to your video, it's going to be coming through your messaging, your branding, and with the video, you begin to see the potential and the actual strength and versatility of your brand.
One of the things too with video commanding stronger consumer attention is that video, even though you can be tailoring it to a specific target audience, video in and of itself is really ageless. So anyone is capable of watching a video and anyone is capable of engaging in a video. To Rick's point, the content that you're putting forth is going to be what tailors it to a particular target audience.
And not to mention, but video, I don't think we've said it more enough, but we'll probably say it more, and that is video is going to continue to be the preferred method or medium.
Video really is going to be that universal link among all demographics.
While past generations can still recall what it's like to receive information through the radio. Excuse me, Kat, are you looking at me? Digital natives are accustomed to the experience of viewing monumental moments as they happen and from a wide variety of platforms. Everyone voraciously consumes video, regardless of the time, the place, or the medium. This means marketers must always understand the target audience, and identifying whom that turns out to be will determine the best timing and placement for your video, be it television, online, or a blend of venues.
And speaking of the different venues and speaking of television and digital video, one of the items that we haven't specifically touched on is going to be the overall impact of mobile. And I mentioned that eMarketer had released an article today talking about native mobile video. So it's really going to be that blend between native video and then mobile video advertising. But as we do see that mobile overall continues to increase, we see that regardless of what the demographic age is that that's how people are more actively going to be consuming online video. And with that, it's important to really understand what the overall impact of video is going to have, maybe not even necessarily on your target audience and how your consumers are engaging, but from the very basics of marketing and from a digital marketing strategy, video enhances optimization. It enhances SEO. And when we're talking about SEO, what SEO really does is it allows for your messaging and for your brand, for your company to be found organically. And so what we find is that for companies that actually have sites that utilize video and utilize proper video optimization, that they're over 50% more likely to appear on the front page of Google search results. Now, we know that Google loves video because they own YouTube, and obviously we've talked about YouTube at length today. But the important thing to remember is that when you are utilizing video specifically within your SEO plan is to not just necessarily drive them to your YouTube channel. You want to make sure that you're really capturing and driving that traffic to your website. And in order to do that, there's a couple different things that you need to make sure you have in play. And one of those is going to be crafting great headlines and also implementing keyword-rich descriptions in order to really maximize the SEO potential for the pages that you have on your site that do have that video embedded on them. A lot of times people tend to forget that they have to have that great headline and they need to have those keyword descriptions included with their video. But it goes back to when I was talking about Facebook advertising. You don't just want to post a native video and not have content accompanying it. You want to make sure that you have a really strong 1-2 punch with what you're putting out there. Now, what we do see is with utilizing video, the impact of video is not just that you can get your viewers to actually engage in what you're showing them. You also want to make sure that they're going to convert. And that is for all marketers, at the end of the day, what we want is we want more sales, more students, more prospects. We want more people to actually engage with our brand and our company.
According to the Forrester research, website visitors do not want to read extensive content. They prefer to watch it. Only 20% of visitors will stick around to read web content, but 80% of visitors will watch a video with the same information presented in it. Additionally, your site may become 6 times more likely to convert a visitor into a paying customer.
And with an impact like that, with that number that Rick just referenced, where your site could become 6 times more likely to convert a visitor into a paying customer if you have video on it, that's huge. And at the beginning of the webinar, Rick was talking about if you're not utilizing video, that you're not just missing out on one opportunity, you're missing out on multiple opportunities. And that rings so true. So what the overall takeaway is that you should really, as part of your marketing strategy, make sure to go ahead and really take your video and turn it from any communication into a more than experience with your end goals in mind.
Thanks to the tidal wave of interactive gaming and virtual reality, people can now become mentally and even physically immersed in your marketing. Combining motion video with the ability for audiences to react and respond both mentally and physiologically, I like to get that word out right, open a new marketing universe with endless possibilities.
I mentioned that here at Grag Advertising, we're direct response. And I say that probably 100 times a day. And utilizing video really is a key element in an overall direct response marketing discipline. And that's because video really is going to be one of the most potent tools that as a marketer you can be utilizing because it provides an experiential motivation. We talked about how with being visual beings, how video provides that motion, that sight, and that sound, and it encompasses more senses than other advertising, but it also does provide an additional motivation there. And that's because it's really going to be that storytelling, and it's really going to be focusing on the ideology of what your video is putting forth. But your video, in addition to just the ideology of it, it can be cost effective. I talked about a couple different options today, and it can be efficient based off of what your end goal objective is going to be.
But what the most important thing, at least from in context to what I'd like to talk about today, is focus on ideation. A great idea or concept in advertising is always the focus and the challenge. Beyond its obvious storytelling superiority, it can be cost-effective and efficient means that compels action, and now results can even be measured in real time. What we're going to do now is we'd like to show you a couple of examples that take into consideration ideation, and an example of that is trapvertising, which is interesting in the blend of the two words, because what we're talking about here are ways to present high-end production and low-end production that have such strong ideas that they both can really demand the viewing power as well as the sharing capabilities that can put them on an even playing field. So with that, we're going to show you the first one, which is Volkswagen Passat and the Force. Now this particular piece was done at the 2014 Super Bowl, and we'll talk just briefly about it. We want to do the next one. And we're going to show you the next one, and then we'll talk briefly about both of them.
Will it blend? That was the question. That is the question. Let's find out. I think I'm going to push the smoothie button. I smoke. Don't breathe this. Now, you fans on YouTube have asked me to blend an iPhone. So I did. But I have another. I'm going to put this on eBay.
Thank you, Tiffany. I think the thing that we can glean from this is that it's when we start looking at advertising and we see where you are not only developing a hybrid with an artist or a movie in this case and a major brand like Volkswagen, we see major production, we see a great piece, and we see actually 62,805,599 views and counting, as well as 5,372,945 shares. This was probably the most effective advertising piece that was done and showed the absolute muscle power that goes with video versatility. The other one was a series of ads that spots that was developed by Blend Tech, which is keep it simple. And really all they did was had a studio background, and they always went to it with the Blend Tech and the same gentleman that presented different ways of showing the capabilities of a Blend Tech. Very low production, and this particular one, the total subscribers was 832,131 with 265,875,631 views and counting. So it shows you that you don't need a lot of money to develop something that has the capability of spreading across the internet and developing the type of shares that these do. That said, we have another one that we're not going to show you today, but this is the one from Shakira that was presented at the 2015 World Cup. And this one was about 3.5 minutes. Check it out. This one is probably the most high production piece I've seen that was not only successful, but had 569,206,426 views, as well as 5,375,000 plus shares on Facebook and Twitter. So you can see the power of these, but it doesn't mean that you have to spend that type of money. Remember, the idea is important, and remember your brand and the consistency of the messaging that will produce a positive and effective response. Now I'm going to show you something interesting. And this is something many of you probably aren't aware of. But video's added a new dimension to print. And what this really is one of our business cards. And we've been able to use what is called augmented reality to take video to a different venue. And with that, we have a video to show you exactly how this works. And whenever you speak with any associate with Greg Advertising, have them show you their card and have them put their iPhone or their Droid over this and see what happens. What we want to make sure you understand is that video versatility, we haven't seen the end of its capabilities. And if we ever have the opportunity to work with you, we'd like to show you possibilities first and foremost in your brand. We want to make sure that what we're saying speaks to the truth and the value of what you offer, but at the same time, with the expertise of our DMG group here at GRAG and Kat's leadership, I think we can show you really how versatile video can be.
So once again, thank you for joining us today. If anyone does have any questions, now would be the time that we'll be able to answer those. And other than that, if you do have any questions or if you do need certification, if you want to send an email directly to me, my email address is cvon@gragadv.com, and I'll be able to help you out.
I think the question that we have here is, you've mentioned that video commands more consumer attention, but is there a length you'd recommend we'd keep our video content within, maybe under 1 minute or 30 seconds? Well, you're pretty close. I think the thing we want to remember is 30 seconds is probably the most efficient way to use your dollars. We do 15-second and even in some cases 10-second videos. A lot to get into a 10-second video, so you want to be smart and simple about your messaging. But 30 seconds is probably optimum, not only from a message point of view, but from a cost investment as well.
And I think a part of that also goes to what your end goal objective is, and especially, for instance, if you're utilizing the YouTube platform for advertising, taking a look at how you do want to promote your video content. If you're going to be going with a TrueView ad, if you're going to be focusing on really specific CPAs, at that point we do tend to see, if you keep your content around 1 minute, even though there is no maximum length for that you'll have more success. However, if you are going to be utilizing, for instance, a reserved video ad, that one that's going to be on the impression base, we do tend to find that 30 seconds is actually the maximum there. So you wouldn't be able to run a minute-long content at that point.
Okay, the next question we have is, how much marketing budget should be spent on digital video? There are two aspects to that, and I can obviously speak to traditional video, but Kat can definitely speak to online. I'm going to be careful here because it depends on whether your objective is to initiate a brand, whether your objective is to develop a program that's been going on. That can vary from 7.5% to 10%, but again, that is something that has to be considered, especially when we start talking about addressing CPL and the website themselves.
Right. And right now, typically with the marketing strategies that we'll run, we tend to, since we are focused on direct response, we'll tend to see roughly around 5% to 10% of the overall marketing budget on the digital media side is going to go to digital video. Now, obviously, once again, whatever your end goal is and what objectives you're trying to achieve, we would take that into consideration and we'd be able to plan accordingly with that. But typically 5 to 10% is what we do see with marketing strategies at this point. So the next question that we have here that says, what if we just post our videos on the company's blog? Do we still need YouTube to be successful? And with that, yes, the answer is yes. You do still need YouTube in order to be successful. A part of that goes back to what we talked about within the webinar, is that Google loves YouTube. Google loves video content. So by engaging in not just a YouTube channel, but by keeping that up to date and doing YouTube advertising, you will see an overall impact within your marketing strategy. And then at this time, we don't have any other questions. So thank you once again for joining us today. Rick and I have both loved speaking with all of you. And once again, if you have any questions later on, or if you need a certification, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to address any other questions.
And we also, this is Tiffany here, we also have resources for you on the GRAG blog. So if you go ahead and visit gragadv.com, you'll find other videos, articles, and research papers for your reference. And we also want to invite you all to come back and join us in October for our October webinar, Admissions on Mute. Registration information will be sent with our webinar recording for this month. And we would like to thank Rick and Kat for joining us today. As they said, feel free to send us any questions that you might have that came up after the webinar. We will be sending you guys the recording of this for your reference. And thank you for joining us, and have a great afternoon.